My name is Lucas Harper, and until 6 months ago, I was living what I thought was a good life in Spring Pines, Oregon. Nice house in a quiet neighborhood, steady job as a cybersecurity specialist for a tech firm, and Emma, my wife of 9 years. But you know what they say about still waters. They can hide the deepest currents. We met in college. Emma was studying education, and I was completing my computer science degree. She had this infectious laugh that would fill up a room, and when we started dating, her enthusiasm for life was what drew me in. We got married a year after graduation, bought our first house, and planned our future together. "We'll have 2 kids," Emma would say, tracing patterns on my chest as we lay in bed. "Maybe a dog, and we'll take them camping every summer like my parents did with us." I would smile and nod, already picturing little versions of Emma running around our backyard. For the first 5 years, our marriage was good. Not perfect, but good. We both worked hard, saved money, and started trying for a baby around our 3rd anniversary. That's when things began to change. After 2 years of trying with no success, we saw specialists. Tests were done, options were discussed, and the emotional toll grew heavier each month. Emma took it hard. Her sister Bree had 2 kids without even trying. Her oldest, Max, was born when Bree was barely 21, and her daughter Lily came 3 years later. Every baby shower invitation became a knife twist for Emma. "It's not fair," she'd say, staring at the ceiling in our bedroom. "Why is it so easy for everyone else?" I'd hold her hand and tell her we'd figure it out, that we had options, that we were in this together. But after the 5th year of marriage, I started noticing a change in Emma. The distance between us grew slowly at first. Subtle shifts in her behavior, the way she'd turn away when I reached for her at night, how her smiles became less frequent. By our 7th anniversary, we'd stopped trying for a baby. By our 8th, we'd stopped talking about it altogether. And by our 9th, I sometimes wondered if we were even living in the same house anymore. That's when Bree showed up on our doorstep. It was a rainy Tuesday evening in April. I had just finished a video conference with clients and was looking forward to a quiet dinner, maybe convincing Emma to watch a movie with me, anything to bridge the growing gap between us. Then the doorbell rang. Emma got there before me. I heard voices in the hallway, Emma's surprised gasp, then Bree's unmistakable dramatic tone, followed by children's voices. I walked into our living room to find Emma hugging her sister while 2 kids stood awkwardly in the doorway, suitcases at their feet. "Lucas," Emma said, turning to me with more animation than I'd seen in months. "Bree needs a place to stay, just for a few days." Bree wiped away tears that I couldn't help but notice appeared on command. At 32, Emma's younger sister had always been the family tornado, leaving destruction in her wake while somehow emerging unscathed herself. She was pretty in that attention-grabbing way. Bright red hair, dyed, of course, always dressed like she was heading to a photo shoot, and with a talent for making every situation about herself. "James kicked me out," she explained, steering her children, Max, now 11, and Lily, 8, toward our couch. "The bastard changed the locks when I was picking up the kids from school." Can you believe it? I could, actually. From what little I knew of James, he had put up with Bree's drama for longer than most would have. But I kept that thought to myself. "Of course you can stay," Emma said before I could even process what was happening. "Right, Lucas?" What could I say? Just for a few days seemed reasonable enough. So I nodded, helped bring in more bags from Bree's car, and cleared out our guest room. That night, as Emma and I got ready for bed, I tried to get more information. "What happened with James?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Emma shrugged. "Bree said he's been impossible lately, controlling. They had a fight, and he just snapped." Did she say what the fight was about? My wife gave me a look that had become all too familiar, a mixture of annoyance and dismissal. "Does it matter? She's my sister, Lucas. She needs us." I let it go. After all, it was just for a few days. Except it wasn't. 3 days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. By the 1-month mark, Bree had spread her possessions throughout our house like an invasive species. Her makeup cluttered our bathroom counter. Her wine glasses, always half full of expensive Cabernet that I paid for, dotted our living room. Her children's toys lay in ambush for my bare feet in the middle of the night. And Bree herself seemed to take particular pleasure in disrupting my routines. If I was working in my home office, She'd bring the kids in to ask me questions about my computer stuff. If I was watching the news in the evening, she'd change the channel to reality TV. If I made myself a sandwich, she'd comment on my boring food choices. What bothered me most wasn't Bree's presence. It was Emma's reaction to it. My wife, who had barely smiled in months, was suddenly animated again. She and Bree would stay up late, drinking wine and laughing like teenagers. They'd reminisce about their childhood, make inside jokes, and plan shopping trips. It was as if Emma had been hibernating, and Bree's arrival had awakened her. But not for me. With me, Emma remained distant, distracted. 6 weeks after Bree's arrival, I tried to discuss the situation with Emma. We were in our bedroom, the only space in the house that remained somewhat ours, though even that was compromised by Bree's habit of barging in without knocking. "Have you talked to Bree about her plans?" I asked cautiously, sitting on the edge of our bed. It's been over a month. Emma was removing her makeup at her vanity, her back to me. I saw her shoulders tense. "She's going through a difficult time, Lucas. The divorce paperwork just started. I understand that, but we need some boundaries. The kids are disrupting my work calls, and Bree—" "The kids are just being kids," Emma cut me off, turning to face me. "And Bree is my sister. What do you expect me to do? Throw her out?" "That's not what I'm saying. I just think we need to establish some ground rules. Maybe help her find her own place." Emma's eyes narrowed. "You've never liked her, have you?" "This isn't about liking her. It's about our home and our marriage." She laughed, a short, bitter sound that felt like a slap. "Our marriage. Now you're concerned about our marriage? Where was this concern for the past 2 years, Lucas?" I was stunned into silence. We hadn't really talked about us in so long that her accusation caught me off guard. "I've always been concerned about our marriage," I said quietly. "I've been trying to reach you, Emma. You're the one who's been pulling away." "Because you gave up," she snapped, tears forming in her eyes. "You gave up on us having a family. You were so wrapped up in your work, in your routines. At least Bree makes me feel like I'm not alone in this house." Her words hit like a physical blow. Had I given up? I thought I was giving her space, respecting her need to process our inability to have children. I'd been trying to be strong for both of us. "I never gave up on us," I said, but even to my ears, the words sounded hollow. Emma turned back to her mirror, effectively ending the conversation. "Bree and the kids need us right now. It's not forever." But as I lay awake that night, listening to the sounds of Bree rummaging in our kitchen downstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that not forever was stretching into something that looked remarkably like indefinitely. And I was right. 2 months after Bree moved in, our house no longer felt like mine. My office became the kids' homework room in the afternoons. Our peaceful backyard was now dominated by a gaudy inflatable pool Bree had purchased with my credit card for the children's summer. She'd explained to Emma, who thought it was a wonderful idea. But the real change was in how Bree spoke to me. What started as subtle digs evolved into open disrespect. "Still wearing that old shirt, huh, Lucas?" she'd say at breakfast. "Don't you have any style at all?" Or when I'd come home from work, the robot returns to his charging station. Emma never defended me. Sometimes she'd even laugh along, as if Bree's comments were just good-natured teasing. Each time it happened, I felt something inside me harden a little more. One night I came home late from work to find my office door locked. I could hear giggling inside, Bree's distinctive laugh, and another voice I couldn't immediately place. I knocked, annoyed that they'd locked themselves in my workspace. "Just a minute," Bree called out, followed by more laughter and hushed voices. When the door finally opened, I found Bree and a man I'd never seen before sitting at my desk, my computer open in front of them. Empty wine bottles littered the floor. "Lucas!" Bree exclaimed, her voice slurred. "Meet Ryan, he's my consultant." Ryan was tall, slick, with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. He stood and extended his hand. "Pleasure to meet you, man. Bree's told me all about you." "What are you doing in my office?" I asked, ignoring his hand. "Just using your computer to look at some legal stuff," Bree waved dismissively. "Divorce paperwork. Ryan's helping me screw James over." I looked at my computer screen. They'd been going through my files. Personal documents, Work projects, financial records. Get out, I said quietly, a cold rage building inside me. Both of you, now. Wow, touchy, Bree laughed, but she stood up, wobbling slightly. Come on, Ryan, let's give the control freak his precious space back. As they stumbled past me, Ryan whispered loudly, you weren't kidding about him. Total buzzkill. I spent the next hour changing all my passwords and checking what they'd accessed. They'd been in my personal email, my banking information, even my work files. I was furious, not just at the invasion of privacy, but at the casual way they'd violated my boundaries. When I confronted Emma about it later, she was dismissive. Bree said they just needed to print some documents for her divorce. She said, barely looking up from her book. It's not a big deal, Lucas. They were drunk in my office, going through my personal files. How is that not a big deal? Emma sighed, marking her page and setting the book aside. You're overreacting. Bree wouldn't do anything malicious. You don't know that, I insisted. You don't see how she acts when you're not around. She has no respect for me or our home. Maybe if you were more welcoming to her. More welcoming? I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I've let her live in our house for 2 months. I've paid for her food, her wine, her shopping sprees. I've put up with her kids destroying our house and her treating me like an unwanted roommate. How much more welcoming should I be? Emma's face hardened. She's family, Lucas, my family, and she's going through a hard time. And what about me? What about us? Doesn't that matter to you anymore? She looked away, her silence more damning than any words could have been. The breaking point came during a dinner at our house with Emma's parents. Bree had invited them without telling me. I came home from work to find my mother-in-law in our kitchen and my father-in-law watching sports in my living room. Family dinner tonight, Emma informed me when I asked what was going on. Mom and Dad wanted to see the kids. I changed out of my work clothes and joined them, trying to be a good sport despite being ambushed. The conversation revolved around Bree's divorce, the children's adjustment, and Emma's new project of redecorating our guest room to make it more comfortable for Bree. I sat quietly, picking at my food until my father-in-law asked about my work. Still doing that computer security stuff, Lucas? I nodded. We just signed a new contract with a healthcare provider. It's a big... God, can we not talk about computers at dinner? Bree interrupted, rolling her eyes. It's so boring. I was just answering, I began. Lucas lives in his own little digital world, Bree continued, speaking to her parents but throwing me a dismissive look. Half the time, I don't think he even notices what's happening in this house. My mother-in-law laughed uncomfortably. My father-in-law took a sudden interest in his mashed potatoes. Emma said nothing. I noticed plenty, I said evenly. Do you, though? Bree tilted her head, a mocking smile on her lips. Sometimes I think if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice for days. You're like a ghost in your own home. The table fell silent. I looked at Emma, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to acknowledge how inappropriate her sister's comment was. She looked down at her plate and said nothing. In that moment, something broke inside me, or maybe something that had been slowly breaking for years finally shattered completely. I set down my fork carefully, wiped my mouth with the napkin, and stood up. Excuse me, I said quietly. I have some work to finish. I spent the rest of the evening in my office, door locked, staring at my computer screen, but seeing nothing. The words kept echoing in my head. If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice for days. The worst part wasn't Bree saying it. It was Emma's silence that confirmed it. 3 weeks later, Bree decided to host a family barbecue in our backyard. I found out when I came home to find Emma and Bree writing out a shopping list. We need to get steaks, buns, more of that potato salad Mom likes, Bree was saying. Oh, and James is bringing the kids back Friday night, so we'll have them for the barbecue too. Who all is coming? I asked, setting down my laptop bag. Both women looked up, almost surprised to see me standing there. Just family, Emma said vaguely. My parents, my Aunt Diane and Uncle Robert, a few cousins. And some friends, Bree added. I invited Sarah and Mike and that cute guy from your yoga class, Emma. What's his name? Nathan? I raised an eyebrow at my wife. You invited Nathan from your yoga class to our family barbecue? Emma had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Bree thought it would be nice to have more people. Nathan just moved here. He doesn't know many people yet. Anything I should do to help prepare? I asked, already knowing the answer. No, we've got it covered, Bree said dismissively. Just stay out of the way. I looked at Emma, who was already back to writing her list. Stay out of the way, in my own home. For a barbecue, I hadn't been consulted, Bob. Right, I said. I'll be in my office. That night, I overheard a conversation that changed everything. I was heading to the kitchen for water when I heard Emma and Bree talking on the back porch, their voices carrying through the open window. You need to stop antagonizing him, Emma was saying, her voice tense. He's already upset about the barbecue. Please, Bree scoffed. Lucas needs to lighten up. This is my home too now. It's not, though, Emma said softly. It's our house, mine and Lucas's. There was a pause, then Bree's voice sharper now. You don't really believe that, do you? When's the last time you and Lucas did anything together? When's the last time you even wanted to? Face it, Emma, your marriage was over long before I got here. That's not true, Emma protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? You've been telling me for years how distant he is, how you feel like you're living with a stranger. I'm just saying what you're too afraid to admit. You'd be better off without him. Bree, stop. Why? Because you know I'm right? Look, all I'm saying is that Nathan seems really into you, and you deserve to be happy. If Lucas is too wrapped up in his computer world to notice that his wife is miserable, why should you keep pretending? I backed away from the window, feeling sick. Was that what Emma thought? That I was the one who had checked out of our marriage? That I was the reason she was unhappy? And Nathan, the yoga instructor, the pieces clicked into place. Emma's sudden interest in weekend yoga classes, her vague answers about where she'd been, the way she'd looked when Bree mentioned inviting him to the barbecue. I went back to our bedroom and lay awake for hours replaying the conversation in my head. By morning, I had made a decision. I would see how this barbecue played out. I would watch Emma with Nathan. And then I would know what I needed to do. The day of the barbecue arrived, a sunny Saturday in July. I woke early, as I always did, and went for a run. When I returned, our backyard was already being transformed. Emma and Bree had rented tables and chairs that were being set up by two teenagers I didn't recognize. A massive new grill stood on our patio, another purchase I hadn't been consulted about. I showered and made myself coffee, watching the activity from our kitchen window. Emma was directing the placement of coolers and tiki torches. Bree was arranging flowers on the tables. They looked happy, energized, like I was witnessing a party at someone else's house. By noon, guests started arriving. Emma's parents, her aunt and uncle, cousins I vaguely remembered from holidays past, friends of Bree's I'd never met, and yes, Nathan from yoga class, tall, tanned, and immediately monopolizing Emma's attention with some story about a retreat in Bali. I moved through my own backyard like a visitor, making small talk when necessary, refilling my drink more often than I should have. No one asked about my work or my opinions or my anything. I was, as Bree had so accurately predicted, a ghost in my own home. What was more painful was watching Emma with Nathan. The way she laughed at his jokes, touched his arm, leaned in close to hear him over the music. There was an ease between them that Emma and I hadn't shared in years. I caught them slipping away from the crowd at one point, heading toward the side of the house where a small garden path led to the front yard. They returned 15 minutes later, Emma's cheeks flushed, Nathan's hand lingering on the small of her back. Late in the afternoon, as the sun began its descent and the alcohol had loosened everyone up, I found myself standing alone near the edge of our property, watching the scene. Emma was laughing at something Nathan was saying. Bree was holding court at the main table, loudly recounting the injustices of her marriage to an enraptured audience. I was contemplating slipping away to my office when Bree's voice suddenly rose above the ambient chatter. "Oh my God, did I tell you guys what Lucas said the other day?" she called out, gesturing in my direction. He was complaining about the kids being too loud when he was trying to work. All eyes turned to me, including Emma's, her expression a mixture of wine-induced relaxation and mild curiosity. I didn't complain, I said calmly. I asked if they could play in the backyard during my client call. See, Bree laughed, addressing the crowd. He's like this grumpy old man trapped in our basement. Half the time I forget he even lives here. A few people laughed uncomfortably. Emma's smile tightened slightly, but she said nothing. Bree, emboldened by the alcohol and attention, pressed on. I told Emma the other day, if Lucas disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice for days. He's practically invisible already. More laughter, louder this time. Emma chuckled along, sharing a look with Nathan that made my stomach clench. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Like watching myself from a distance, I smiled, raised my glass in a mock toast, and said clearly, maybe we should find out. Then I turned and walked into the house, leaving confused silence in my wake. That night, after the guests had gone and the backyard was littered with the debris of celebration, I lay awake beside Emma. She had come to bed late, smelling of wine and smoke and other people's perfume. Your sister crossed a line today, I said into the darkness. Emma sighed. She was just joking, Lucas. You're being too sensitive. She humiliated me in front of your entire family, and you laughed. It wasn't like that, she murmured, already turning away from me. You're making too big a deal of this. Am I? Would you laugh if I made jokes about her failed marriage in front of everyone? That's different, Emma said, her voice hardening. She's going through a difficult time. And what am I going through, Emma? Have you thought about that at all? She didn't answer, and a few minutes later, her breathing deepened into sleep. I stared at the ceiling, a plan forming in my mind, a test perhaps, or maybe an escape. I wasn't sure which yet, but the seed had been planted. If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone notice? I was about to find out. The next morning, I woke before Emma and went about my usual Sunday routine. Coffee, news on my tablet, a light breakfast. But inside, something had shifted. I moved through my house with new eyes, noticing everything as if cataloging it for the last time. Over the next 2 weeks, I set my escape plan in motion. I secured a new bank account, arranged remote work with my boss, and found a cabin in a mountain town 3 hours away. I packed gradually and made preparations during stolen moments, when everyone else was asleep or out of the house. Meanwhile, Bree and Emma continued their routines, oblivious to my intentions. Not once did either of them notice the changes in my behavior or question why I was suddenly taking more calls in private or disappearing for longer lunch breaks. Their indifference only confirmed that I was making the right decision. What they also didn't notice was that I'd installed a small camera in our living room, hidden in a bookshelf ornament. I told myself it was for security, but deep down I knew I was looking for confirmation, proof that what I suspected about Emma and Nathan was true. I got it 3 days later. I was at work when the motion alert pinged my phone. I opened the app and watched as Emma led Nathan into our living room. They were laughing, touching, comfortable in a way that spoke of familiarity. He pulled her close, kissed her deeply, and she responded with an eagerness I hadn't seen from her in years. Are you sure he won't be home? Nathan asked as they broke apart. He never comes home early, Emma replied, taking his hand and leading him toward the stairs. We have hours. I closed the app, my hand shaking. I had my answer. In our house, in our bed, while I was at work. The final piece fell into place when I found a note on our kitchen counter one morning. Taking Bree and the kids shopping, then lunch at that new place downtown. Don't wait up for dinner. E. No invitation, no consideration of my plans. Just another day of being an afterthought in my own marriage. I spent the day finalizing my preparations. I transferred the last of the money I had allocated for myself. I cleaned out my personal items from my office, leaving just enough to avoid suspicion. I wrote a letter to Emma that took me 3 drafts to get right. When they returned home that evening, laden with shopping bags and talking excitedly about their day, I greeted them with a calm smile. Good day? I asked. The best, Bree gushed. Emma bought the cutest dress, and we found this amazing new bakery. Sounds nice, I said. I ordered pizza for dinner. It's in the kitchen. Emma looked surprised. Oh, I thought we told you not to wait for dinner. We already ate. I got it for myself, I said. But there's plenty if anyone wants some. No one did. Bree shepherded the kids upstairs for baths, and Emma disappeared into the living room to call her mother. I ate a slice of pizza standing at the kitchen counter, looking around at the home that no longer felt like mine. That night, I waited until Emma was asleep. I carefully got out of bed, dressed in the clothes I had laid out in the bathroom, and took my phone and wallet. I looked at my wife's sleeping form for a long moment, remembering the girl with the infectious laugh who had once made me feel like the luckiest man alive. I left the letter on my pillow, along with the divorce papers I had prepared, and a printed screenshot from my security camera. Emma and Nathan entering our bedroom. Then I walked out of our bedroom for the last time. The house was quiet as I made my way downstairs. I picked up my laptop from my office and the small bag I had hidden in the hall closet. I didn't look back as I closed the front door behind me, got into my car, and drove away from Spring Pines. 3 hours later, as dawn was breaking over the mountains, I arrived at my new home, a small cabin on the outskirts of a town called Blue River. It was simple, rustic, and completely mine. I unpacked my few belongings, made the bed with sheets I had bought specifically for this place, and stood at the window looking out at the pine trees surrounding my new sanctuary. For the first time in years, I took a deep breath that didn't feel constricted by disappointment and resentment. I wondered how long it would take for Emma to read my letter, to realize I was actually gone, to understand that I had taken her sister's joke and turned it into reality. The letter was simple. Emma, you were right about one thing. I have been a ghost in our home for a long time. The difference is I noticed. Every day I noticed as we drifted further apart, as you found more joy in your sister's company than in mine, as you stopped seeing me altogether. Bree was right too. If I disappeared, no one would notice for days. So I'm disappearing. By the time you read this, I'll be gone, not just from the house, but from our marriage. The divorce papers are straightforward. I'm not asking for anything except my freedom. Sign them, send them to the address listed with my lawyer, and we can both move on. I know about Nathan. I know about all the lies. I deserve better than to be made a joke in my own home. And I deserve better than a wife who couldn't even be faithful in our own bed. Now you'll notice I'm gone. But it's too late, Lucas. I turned on my phone once I was settled in the cabin. There were no calls, no texts. Confirmation, if I needed it, that my absence hadn't yet been detected. I switched it off again and made myself breakfast in my new kitchen. The silence around me wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. It took 3 days for my phone to explode with notifications when I briefly turned it on. Missed calls from Emma, voicemails, texts ranging from confused to angry to pleading. I listened to one voicemail, Emma's voice, tight with anger. What the hell is this, Lucas? You can't just leave. Call me back immediately. I didn't. Instead, I emailed my boss confirming my remote work arrangement, set up my new home office, and began establishing routines that were solely mine. I hiked in the mornings. I worked during the day. I read books in the evening on a small wagon overlooking a creek behind my cabin. I slept soundly for the first time in years. A week passed, then 2. The calls and texts from Emma grew less frequent. My lawyer confirmed she had received the divorce papers but hadn't signed them yet. I wasn't surprised. Emma had always had difficulty accepting when things were over. I began to meet people in Blue River. The owner of the local coffee shop, an older woman named Dorothy who saved the quietest corner table for me each morning. The librarian Mark, who recommended local history books and invited me to a community book club. A group of hikers who welcomed me on their Saturday morning trail excursions. I didn't tell anyone my full story. I was just Lucas, a tech consultant who had moved to the mountains for a change of pace. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. I found I didn't need to unpack my past for these new acquaintances. They took me as I was now, and that was refreshing. A month after I left, I received an email from Emma. Lucas, I don't understand how you could just walk away from 9 years together. Whatever problems we had, we could have worked through them. Running away solves nothing. Yes, I made mistakes. Nathan was a mistake. But you were so distant, so uninterested in me for so long. Do you know how it feels to be invisible to your own husband? To be treated like a roommate instead of a wife? Bree has found her own place now. The house is empty and quiet. Too quiet. I keep expecting to hear you in your office or see you making coffee in the morning. Please come home so we can talk. I miss you. Emma, I read it twice, then closed my laptop without responding. The Emma who missed me now was the same Emma who hadn't seen me for years. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 months after my departure, I had settled completely into my new life. My work was going well. I had picked up additional clients who appreciated my efficiency and discretion. I had made acquaintances who were slowly becoming friends. I had even gone on a casual date with a woman I met at the book club. Nothing serious, but a pleasant evening of conversation that held possibilities for the future. I was sitting at my favorite table in Dorothy's coffee shop one rainy October morning when someone slid into the chair across from me. I looked up from my laptop, expecting to see Dorothy with a coffee refill. Instead, I found myself looking at Kevin Roberts, my former neighbor from Spring Pines and one of the few people I had considered a friend during my marriage to Emma. "Found you," he said, offering a tentative smile. "You're a hard man to track down, and Lucas." I closed my laptop. "How did you find me?" "I'm in real estate, remember? I have connections with rental agencies. Once I knew you were still in Oregon, it was just a matter of making some calls." He gestured to Dorothy for coffee. "Plus, Emma mentioned you had always talked about living in the mountains someday." At the mention of Emma's name, I felt a tightening in my chest. "Did she send you?" Kevin shook his head. "She doesn't know I'm here. We've talked, though, a lot, actually. She's not doing well, Lucas." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I had never wanted Emma to suffer. I had just needed to stop suffering myself. "Bree moved out about a month ago," Kevin continued, thanking Dorothy as she brought him coffee. "Apparently, she and Emma had a massive fight. Emma finally saw what you'd been trying to tell her all along." "Too late," I said quietly. Kevin nodded. "That's what she said too. She's selling the house, can't afford it on her own, and she says there are too many memories anyway." I absorbed this information, surprised by my lack of emotional response. The house that had once been the center of my world now seemed like a distant memory, a place I had lived in another life. "Why are you here, Kevin?" I asked finally. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from our conversations over backyard fences and beers on summer evenings. "Two reasons. First, as your friend, I wanted to make sure you were okay. You disappeared pretty dramatically, man." "I'm okay," I assured him. "Better than okay, actually." "I can see that," he said, looking around the coffee shop, then back at me. "You seem lighter somehow." "And the second reason, Kevin hesitated. "Emma asked me to give you something if I ever found you. She's been looking, hired a private investigator at one point, but you covered your tracks well." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "She wrote this about a week ago, asked me to keep it with me in case I got a lead on where you were." I stared at the envelope on the table between us. My name was written on it in Emma's familiar handwriting. Once so dear to me, now just ink on paper. "You don't have to read it now," Kevin said, standing up. "Or ever, for that matter. But I promised I'd deliver it if I could." He pulled out a business card and placed it beside the envelope. "My new number. If you ever want to talk or need anything, I'm still your friend, Lucas." I nodded, unable to find words. Kevin squeezed my shoulder briefly, then left the coffee shop, the bell over the door jingling cheerfully behind him. I sat for a long time staring at the envelope. Finally, I picked it up, paid for my coffee, and walked back to my cabin through the light rain. At home, I built a fire in the small stone fireplace and then made myself tea. Only then did I open Emma's letter. "Dear Lucas, I've written this letter 100 times in my head, but now that I'm actually putting pen to paper, I don't know where to begin. With an apology, I suppose. I'm sorry. Those words feel inadequate for the hurt I caused you, but they're true. What you'd not know is that the night after you left, Bree brought that man Ryan back to the house. They ransacked your office looking for financial information, thinking you might have hidden money somewhere. When I caught them, Bree laughed and said you were probably broke anyway. That's when I finally saw her for who she really is. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from James, Bree's ex. He told me things about her divorce that she had lied about. James didn't kick her out. He caught her cheating with multiple men, including Ryan. He had evidence of her stealing money from their joint accounts. All those things she said about him were projections of her own behavior. The house is for sale now. I can't afford it alone, and honestly, I don't want to live there anymore. I've signed the divorce papers and sent them to your lawyer. You're free now, as you should be. Be happy, Lucas. You deserve it. Emma, I read the letter twice, then set it down on the coffee table. Outside, the rain had stopped, and late afternoon sunlight was breaking through the clouds, casting dappled shadows through the pine trees. I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness for the young party we had once been, relief that Emma had finally seen the truth, a lingering ache for what might have been if we had both been different people. But there was no desire to go back, no urge to call her or respond. That chapter was closed. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer in my desk, not to keep close, but to put away, a piece of my past that no longer defined my present. 3 days later, I received confirmation from my lawyer that the divorce was finalized. I was officially single again at 38. That evening, I invited my hiking group over to my cabin for a small gathering, not to celebrate the end of my marriage, but to mark the beginning of whatever came next. As we sat around the fireplace, sharing stories and laughing, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it, surprised to see a number I didn't recognize. "It's Emma. I'm in Blue River. Kevin told me where to find you. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I'm at the lodge on Main Street." I stared at the message, my mind racing. She was here in my town? How had Kevin betrayed my location after promising he wouldn't? I excused myself and stepped onto the porch, dialing Kevin's number with shaking hands. "Did you tell Emma where I am?" I demanded when he answered. "Lucas, I can explain," he began, his voice strained. "She was a mess, talking about hurting herself if she couldn't see you one more time. I was worried about what she might do." "You had no right," I said coldly. "This was my fresh start, my space." "I know, and I'm sorry, but she's not stable, man. She lost everything." "You, the house, her relationship with her sister. She lost her job last week. She's desperate." I hung up, furious and conflicted. Another text came through. "Please, Lucas, just 5 minutes. Then I'll go and never bother you again. I need closure." Closure, the word echoed in my mind. Did I need closure too? Or had I already found it in my new life? I told my guests I had an emergency to attend to and would be back soon. Then I got in my car and drove to the lodge. Emma was sitting in the lobby, her face pale and drawn, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. When she saw me, she stood quickly, nervously smoothing her sweater. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice hoarse. "I wasn't sure you would." "You shouldn't be here, Emma," I replied, keeping my distance. "The divorce is final. We've said everything that needs saying." "I know," she whispered. I needed to see you one more time, to apologize in person." She took a step toward me. "Lucas, I've lost everything. My job, my house, my sister, even my dignity. But losing you was the worst of it. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." "That's usually how it works," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But realization doesn't change reality." "Can't we just talk?" she pleaded. "Somewhere private? Just for a few minutes?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to walk with her along the river path behind the lodge. The evening was cool, the setting sun painting the water in shades of gold and crimson. "I've been seeing a therapist," Emma said as we walked, "trying to understand how I let things get so bad between us, why I was so blind to what Bree was doing, why I betrayed you with Nathan." "And what did you discover?" I asked, curious despite myself. She sighed, "That I blamed you for our inability to have children, that I resented you for seeming to move on while I was still grieving, that I was so lost in my own pain that I couldn't see yours." She paused, wiping away a tear. "And that I used Bree and Nathan as distractions so I wouldn't have to face the real issues in our marriage." We walked in silence for a moment, the rushing river filling the space between us. "I'm sorry about Kevin," she said finally. "I manipulated him into telling me where you were. He was just worried about me." "That seems to be a pattern with you," I observed, "getting people to do what you want by making them worry about you." She flinched at my words. I'm trying to change, Lucas. I really am. I believe you, I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. But that doesn't change anything between us. We had reached a small wooden bench overlooking a bend in the river. Emma sat down, and after a moment's hesitation, I joined her, keeping a careful distance between us. Do you ever think about what might have happened if we'd been able to have children? She asked softly. If we'd had the family we planned? Sometimes, I admitted, but I've made peace with it, with all of it. She turned to face me, her eyes filled with a desperate hope that made my chest ache. Could you ever forgive me enough to try again? Not now, not soon, but someday? We were good together once, Lucas. The question hung in the air between us, heavy with all the history, pain, and broken trust of our past. For a brief, disorienting moment, I could see an alternate future unfolding. One where Emma and I rebuilt from the ashes, where we learned from our mistakes, where we became the partners we had once promised to be. But then I remembered the look on her face as she laughed at Bree's cruel joke, the casual betrayal with Nathan in our own home, the years of emotional distance she had maintained while blaming me for the very separation she had created. No, I said gently but firmly, what we had is gone, Emma. I've moved on, and you need to do the same. Her face crumpled, but she nodded, accepting the finality in my voice. I understand, I just needed to try. As the last light faded from the sky, we walked back to the lodge in silence. At the entrance, Emma turned to me one last time. Be happy, Lucas, she said, echoing the words from her letter. I mean that. You too, I replied. Take care of yourself, Emma. I watched her walk into the lodge, a solitary figure moving through the warm light of the lobby. Then I turned and headed back to my car, to my cabin, to my guests who were waiting for me to return. As I drove through the darkening forest, I felt something shift inside me. Not a weight lifting, exactly, but a sense of completion. The story of Lucas and Emma Harper was finally over. Not with the dramatic confrontation or tearful reunion I might once have imagined, but with a quiet acknowledgement of what was and what could never be again. Back at my cabin, my new friends welcomed me with raised glasses and concerned questions. I assured them everything was fine, just a loose end from my previous life that needed tying up. To new beginnings, someone toasted, and we all raised our glasses. To new beginnings, I echoed, and drank deeply. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the cabin was quiet again, I sat on my deck under the stars. I thought about the strange path that had led me here, how a cruel joke at a family barbecue had become the catalyst for my escape, my freedom, my rebirth. My phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be from Emma, a final goodbye perhaps, but it was from Sarah, the woman from my book club. Had a great time tonight. Dinner tomorrow? Just the two of us this time? I smiled and typed back, I'd like that. As I set my phone down, I noticed a light in the distance, a cabin across the valley, its windows glowing warmly in the darkness. Someone else making a life in these mountains, finding their own path, their own peace. I wondered briefly if Emma would find her way too, if she would heal from the wounds we had inflicted on each other, if she would eventually become the person she wanted to be rather than the person she had allowed herself to become. But that was her story now, not mine. My story was here, in this cabin, in this town, with these people who saw me clearly for who I was. People who would notice if I disappeared tomorrow. Bree's joke had become my reality, but not in the way she had intended. I had disappeared from a life where I was invisible, only to reappear in one where I was finally seen. And that made all the difference.